Welcome to Officers Edge Live. Today is June the 17th, and we have with us Wages Argott. Wages is a trumpeter with many years of experience with the circuses and with Broadway shows. He's a former member of Birmingham Local, current member of Local 802 in New York City. He is also the director of Freelance Services, and that's what he's here to speak to us about today. Good afternoon, Wages.
Love the opportunity to do this. This kind of kicks off hopefully a new era for me and for the department. Many of you probably know that I wasn't in this position full time last year, even if you knew me in this job prior to that. So I spent last year as the assistant secretary, and freelance services wasn't on pause, but it was just kind of on maintenance mode a little bit, kind of in standby. And I tried to do as much as I could and move things forward as much as I possibly could. But in that year, we've had so many positive things happen. Our new administration has really gotten their footing under them and doing a great job of really attacking a lot of organizing targets, which is certainly evident by filling out a full organizing staff of 4 folks that I work very closely with here in New York. And just a great staffing overall. We've got a lot of really talented folks. We've got really great, the folks that I work most closely with are our director of education, Dave Sheldon, who kicked me off there, and then Antoinette Follett, also communications. For me, as a freelance person, as someone who's just in this office doing this work, the 2 keys I've always said, as far as reaching our independent musicians, our freelance musicians, those folks that we really don't even think of us first as a resource to go to when they're out there on their own, is communication and education. So naturally, those are the 2 departments that I work with most closely. Of course, organizing is a big piece of that. I've always thought the freelance department should be an extension or a companion to the organizing department. And, as Dave said, I'm still out there doing the work. I maintain a pretty full-time performance schedule when I'm not doing this job. And I do okay. I feel like I'm a pretty competent musician. I have done a lot of weird stuff. I was on tour for 12 years, and now I play just about everything and totally freelance. The most I work for any one employer throughout the year is probably about 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm kind of out there in the pool all the time. But that is to say that I'm doing this work here at the Federation, not so much because I need to, but because I love to. I've really gotten passionate about this department. It feels really great to be back here. And, seeing a lot of you out there and all the interactions I've had with you over the course of my, few years doing this has really inspired me. And it keeps me going. And I feel like there's kind of a new leaf turning over across the Federation as we move to this organizing model, as we are trying to reach a lot of our independent musicians and figure out how they fit into the system, because it's not traditional organizing. It's not a traditional union, because we have so many employers and our folks work so many different places and so many different job sites. So the approach has to be a little bit different. And of course, you always get that question from our freelance musicians: why should I join the union? What good is that for me? What do I get out of it? It's a tough question to answer. I'm going to do a little bit of talking about that today. Dave, if I could share my screen, I'm going to try to race through my deck here as much as I can, but still make sure I leave plenty of time for discussion and questions. But whenever that's ready to go, I'll go ahead and bring that up. And I'm just going to kind of do, as I said in the Action Network email, kind of a shallow dive into my department, remind everybody what it is that we do here, what I do here. It is a department of one, though, as you know, it's a great team that we have here at the International. And of course, I've always felt like this was only going to work if it was a network of all of you as well. And that's not just our officers, our board members, but our rank and file musicians too. We see so many new members come in and they want to know how they can get involved and help out right away, beyond just the benefit of being a new union member, but what can they do to support our cause? And hopefully there's some answers there here as I move forward as well. I'm going to do my best to leave time for discussion at the end, because I like to hear from all of you, and whether you all are using any of these resources and tools, what your thoughts are, what else you might need that we're not currently offering, and what you think just doesn't work, good or bad. I need to hear it. So let's stay as transparent as possible. You won't hurt my feelings. I've kept all this stuff alive. I've tried to make improvements, but I didn't invent any of this stuff. And so honestly, there's no need for me to get attached to any of it. I want to do what works. And that's going to be dictated, as we all know, from the ground up, right? From what our musicians need, what we as musicians need. So there's not going to be any singular answer. And the work we do, the folks we represent, it's so diverse across the Federation, the United States and Canada. So one thing might work for half of us, or a small percentage of us, and then something else might be needed for others. So that's kind of what we're gonna unpack and drill down on today. And I've set my timer here. I'm going to try to keep this part brief. If you have any questions, if something I'm saying just doesn't make sense, or if I'm misspeaking or something like that, feel free to stop me. I think, Dave, you do a really great job of moderating, but otherwise, I'm going to try to just get through it as quickly as possible, and then we'll have our kind of back and forth at the end, and totally make it kind of an AMA thing. I really want you to just feel free to ask about anything or share anything you'd like to that may be beneficial. If you've done one of our pre-regional conference education sessions, this is going to be very similar. It'll be an abbreviated version of that presentation. And if you've got one coming up, this is probably going to be a little bit of a spoiler for you all too. But this is a presentation that I would like to tailor and do for other bodies of folks too. So if you have hybrid membership meetings and you'd like me to come in and talk to your musicians about this stuff, happy to do that. I've done that for several locals. You've been fortunate enough to do it in person a few times. Or if you're having some kind of outreach meeting where maybe you bring in some musicians from your community, some independent folks, and you'd like for them to come in and hear about exactly what we do for our freelancers, I'd be happy to do a presentation for those folks as well. So let's just get started. Let's do it. So give me just one moment here to get this going. All right, are we up?
Looks good, Wages.
All right, here we go. So I know one of the things that I've heard just kind of talked about in the background in the time that I've been with this department is that it's very much feels like an extension of the IT department, or a very digitally focused department. Lots of transactional benefits, that sort of thing. And I do understand that I'm responsible for a lot of things in that arena. But the heart and soul of what we do, the way I really want to answer that question when we talk about why independent musicians should join the Federation is addressed on this screen here. This is really what I believe, and this is the kind of language that I would love to see in all of the things that I developed, all of the the communication that I'm putting out there, and should be in many cases where you are concerned as well. And I'll get into how we can help with some of those communications thing. Again, it's not my department expressly, but I do try to collaborate as much as I can and make sure that we've got the best sort of messaging and info out there. But this is really why I want to do this, why I feel this department exists, and whatever tools and resources and support we have to make this happen, that's what we're supporting here. So and as I go on, I'm going to try to throw in some talking points here on things, just some language that you all can incorporate into whatever you're doing, whether it's a social post or on your website, or just when you're having these one-on-one conversations with folks. But if you ever need anything with regard to your communication, you want some graphics, you want some kind of ad, you want something for your newsletter, we're happy to put that together on any of these topics that I'm about to mention here as we move forward. So anyway, I just really wanted to get my philosophy out of the way first before we kind of dove into some of the more specifics. But this is a great screen that this kind of just tells you the broadest of overviews of my department, what all the different things are I'm responsible for. You've probably seen all of these words in print before. If you haven't, I'm going to briefly define what everything is that I do. But as you can see, it's a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of stuff that we put into place for very good reason. And was at least one point a catalyst for change. But if it's not so much helping anymore, we'll move on. But I do believe that everything that we're supporting now, that it has a future somewhere in a home somewhere. And I've heard from enough of you so far that you all believe that that's possible as well too. So I'm continuing to support all of these things. Some of these things are specifically under my department. Some touch other departments. But for those of you who are just listening and maybe not seeing the screen right now while you're doing something else, I will be talking about all these things that are listed on the screen now. I'm not just going to have you all read this. This is another great screen. Again, just shows everything. Maybe this kind of visual representation would be something good for your website as well. We're looking at incorporating something like this on our afm.org website also, which would then just kind of gather everything in one place. There really isn't anywhere that all of our freelance resources, tools, that sort of thing are listed together in one place. And I do kind of like the blitz approach, to just have it all there at once. So you just see this nice long list of things that someone can peruse. They can jump and read about these things individually if they're interested. But just to talk about the structure of what we're doing here. The first part of this presentation is really going to be items that apply to our membership and our musical community. The second half is going to be some resources specifically for you, the local officers and board members and folks in your offices, and things that you all can use to help reach the musicians, but are really tailored more for you and support. So the first thing I want to mention is our international online booking agency, AFM Entertainment. It's still supported. We've rebuilt the site to a certain extent. It still looks the same, but it's a lot more functional than it used to be. It still suffers from a lack of, I think, a really deep representation of the body of musicians we have, but we're still taking new signups all the time. It's basically a listing for our musicians who sign up. They sign into the site via their afm.org login. I'm really big on these single sign-ins and not having people have a bunch of different usernames and logins and that sort of things. But this obviously has the potential to be transformative. Folks can get gigs this way. Folks should be getting gigs this way. People like to shop for their musicians the same way they shop for everything else. And why not have an AFM official listing for all of our member musicians online? It's a centralized process right now. It's one single site, AFM Entertainment. We also have afmentertainment.net and .ca if folks are looking for it different ways. But we just need to expand our roster of musicians. As you see, it's not a very big lift to get your little baseball card together there that showcases your band. You have the opportunity to put some YouTube videos up, some sound clips, some photos. But as far as connecting folks with work, a buyer reaches out to me. They tell me what they need. I reach out to the musician. I ask the musician what their all-in price would be. I make sure that's consistent with the local scale. We continue to have that conversation. Hopefully by the time we get to the end of it, there's an agreement. And so there's really no communication between the musician and the buyer until it's time to sign the contracts. And then at that point, the whole thing's handed off and hopefully right off into the sunset with a happy paid musician. But at any rate, that exists. The biggest update for this is that I think I'd really like to see this be decentralized. I think I'd really like to move this to a more regional approach. I still love the idea of folks having to log in without any oversight from the local, as far as like you all being responsible for administering passwords, logins, usernames, all of that. But I do want you to have some oversight. I think this is a great way for our referral service model to be moving, as opposed to just a listing posted on your site, but an actual sortable categorical list where folks could not only find bands and musical acts that they want to hire, but also educators as well. So this is something I've been building behind the scenes with our very talented WordPress expert and an executive board member from local 677 in Honolulu, John LeBlanc. And we're trying to build a module that could plug into WordPress websites, which a lot of you probably have, whether you're with us or somebody else, or something you could link to separately, but that would feature your musicians and then take some lift off of you. I'm also very big on wanting to support as many different resources and things as possible, but I'm not looking to add any work or financial burden to any of you or your locals either, especially if you're a smaller local and you're already overtaxed and wearing too many hats anyway. This is supposed to be a support thing, not something to add additional work onto your plate. Next thing I want to mention is Venuology. Venuology is one of our properties that I'm very proud of because this is open to all musicians, not just AFM members. But Venuology was created as a Yelp-style review app for venues, for all the places that we play as musicians, where you can log in anonymously and talk about the positive or negative experiences you've had at a place. We've recently reskinned this site as well, also in a WordPress format. It's nice and responsive on mobile devices. We need more venues in here, folks. Whatever we can do to get folks to add more venues. It's very easy to sign up. This one doesn't have an afm.org login because it's anonymous. You create something. All we need is an email address. You sign up. Any of you local officers who are interested in getting on the ground floor, so to speak, of the next wave of Venuology and want to be admins and want to get involved in the process of inputting the venues in your region and jurisdiction, or starting to approve some of these venues and that sort of thing, I would love the help. This one's going to have to be a community source project, but it has I think, great potential, not only for us as organizers, whether on the international or local level, to identify those places where we can either steer our musicians toward or away, but also for our musicians to find places where they can, put together a run of shows in a region where, they know they're going to be treated fairly and treated well. So anyway, I think we all agree that Venuology has a lot of great potential. I know our organizing department does as well. I think we've had various experiences as folks with this property, and I would love to hear more about that later on. But It is something we're very much supporting. It just needs some more community support and love. So whatever we can do to get that going, I'm happy to listen to that. As you all know, back into the IT realm once again, AFM GoPro Hosting. That's our in-house hosting that we run. It's a shared server reseller platform that we operate, but we basically subsidize the cost of operating the hosting and domain registration for our members, and of course for some of our locals. And basically, it empowers folks to build their own websites, host their own websites, take control of these things, learn a skill, but also, it's very important to have a professional, modern, even if it's very simple and one-page website. If you're an individual brand, if you're a musician, if you're an act, this should probably be part of what you offer in addition to any other places that you're listed, or your social media platforms or whatever. But it's super low cost. And this one, for me, if someone has this need and they have a little bit of savvy on their own to get something going, this is a great mathematical pathway to talking someone into paying their annual member dues, because at $19 a year, which is where most people come in on this, it defrays the cost in savings over what they would pay most other hosts out there. I'll say this, I've said many times, before I switched over to GoPro, I was paying GoDaddy like $17 a month, $16.99, something like that, for just basic WordPress hosting. We're $19 a year. So, it could be substantial savings, but again, this is not for everyone. It's not going to be a transformative tool for most, but we do a lot with this. And that is to say that we host our international musician website. We've been doing a lot to stand up individual campaigns. So maybe if you want to have a separate site, separate URL for some kind of campaign or organizing target that you've got going on in your local, maybe you don't want to do that necessarily under your own URL or banner, but want to set something up separately, you can stand up these sites very inexpensively and very quickly. I've done it a few times for some international, national campaigns this past year, but it's very easy for us to do, again, quickly and efficiently, and have something that looks pretty good. So, and again, I think having a base knowledge of operating in this space is super helpful. We'll get into more what you all do on the local level later when we talk about the Quartet program for locals. Fair trade music is also something that's been slightly dormant for a few years, and maybe wasn't as big a piece of my my toolkit prior to my year away. But now that we do have this full organizing staff and really just some super enthusiastic and energetic officers throughout the Federation, I feel like it's a great time for this to make a comeback. This, again, is another idea, another property that is open to everyone and doesn't really require membership. And through Fair Trade Music, we can really start to elevate the conditions at our venues where a lot of our independent musicians play, but also start to educate our folks on how important it is to advocate for themselves and how important it is to accept some minimum standards, both for pay and safety and quality of the work they're doing, and of course dignity, which again are the bigger ideas of what we're talking about here. If you're interested in starting a Fair Trade Music chapter in your local, or just even want to know what that is and how it goes, I mean, it's a real simple concept. I think, to oversimplify the idea, it's basically getting the venues in your area to pledge to that minimum standard, which is dictated by the region where you are and your local scales and conditions. It's a conversation we'd love to have. It's certainly part of our overall organizing plan. I know there's several of you out there who are doing it. Local 1000, our non-geographic local, has quite a few signatories as well in fair trade. But again, I see this as definitely being a part of having some transformative change. Again, even just education for our community. I think it's so important now that we really work on reaching all of our musicians. I know that we often measure success in signups and all of that, but if we can just get some better education and make sure that folks understand the consequences of their actions, both positive and negative, as they're in the community, both our venue owners and our musicians and our fans as well, and the people who come to hear us, I think that the conditions will improve for everyone, and I'm sure the memberships will follow. So I'll just move on. These are some more topics that I can move through quickly. I think you're all aware of this, but obviously single engagement contracts are one of the biggest tools that an independent musician can use. These things are already written. As Dave eloquently put in one of our documents, they hold up in court. These are excellent resources. They're very easy to fill out. I know the idea of getting the paperwork, bringing paperwork into some of these things where folks are used to playing for the cash in the hat and the burger and a beer is sometimes foreign. But again, that's part of our education and communication. And this protects both the buyer, both the hiring agent and the musician as well. And to be honest, from what I've seen, they're just not getting filed. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody sometimes. You feel like when you're being paid fairly, maybe you don't want to bring paperwork into it, but these are important on a lot of levels. And certainly paying into our pension is a big one. And I think we've got some great educational tools into how to do all that as well. And I think that's a great idea for some future webinars and series to talk about exactly how we do this, because there is a bit of an educational gap. We're not MBAs. We didn't get into this line of work because we had that kind of brain. But I think in order to be considered part of that economic system, which apparently the rest of the world doesn't, this is one of the pathways to that. I think we're fantastic artists and wonderful creative minds, but it's tough that people continue, again, as I'm preaching to the choir here, but continue to think of us as hobbyists and part-timers and weekend warriors. We take our work as seriously or more so than anything anybody else does, and we deserve the right to access all of these things like healthcare, retirement, just existing in the current economic structure of our respective countries like everybody else. And this is one of the pathways to that. Again, AFM signatory booking agents, not entirely under my department, but it is something that I'm kind of starting to take a larger role in administering. Again, this is a way we can sort of bring in better actors to hire and place our musicians on gigs around the Federation. We don't have a super extensive roster of booking agents, but we should be adding more, and we should be putting this language out more often and in front of more eyeballs, because this could be again transformative. You may have some musicians who are interested in doing this work. It's only $100 a year. You sign a pledge to follow the guidelines, which are pretty fair anyway. It's stuff that we're already doing, at least as far as we're concerned. But folks who join this program enjoy many of the same benefits as members. As many listings on AFM Entertainment as they want. They get access to the International Musician Magazine, access to GoPro hosting if they want to set up a website. I'm going to keep moving fast because I know we're pressed for time, and I really want to make sure I leave tons of space for us to talk and do feedback. GoPro Tunes, again, super dormant for a long time, even again previous to my time away. But I do feel like this is an interesting idea for our musicians to list their recordings they've made under the appropriate agreement digitally on a space inside of under the auspices of GoPro hosting, and sell directly to consumers with no fees taken out. We keep we do ask that or reduce the payment to the musician by the small PayPal transaction fee, but folks can log on and buy single songs and albums in MP3 or FLAC format, and receive a digital download instantly. And the only issue with this, I think, is that again, we don't have the deepest roster representative of our musicians throughout the Federation. There's just not a lot of musical diversity on this. And I think that even if this isn't your primary resource for selling your albums and getting your music out there, it certainly could be a part of it. And I think that people, again, are pleased with the provenance of knowing that they're buying something that was protected correctly, that the musician is being compensated and treated fairly. And, we have our professional seal that says that, we back this transaction. So I have ideas for growth of GoPro Tunes. I've improved the upload experience. The buying process still has the same visuals as our old website, but the front page is all new. And if you or any of your members are interested in pursuing this, I'd be happy to talk about it. This one still requires a little bit more manual oversight, but it is functional and it does work, and it has been improved. You all know about the International Musician Magazine. This may be a benefit to some folks. Obviously, a lot of really great information here, including audition listings, including opportunities to have your albums listed there that you've recorded. Lots of great advice and lots of ways to keep up with our very inquisitive minds on what we're doing legislatively and what's going on around the Federation. You're all aware of our third-party relationships. I think we probably talked about at length through various digital communications, and if you've heard me speak anytime in the last 6 months about switching over to Hub Insurance in the United States as our group broker for our insurance products. The only update I would give here, and I really don't want to get too deep into insurance because there's so much literature already out there, and is that we do finally have in place and have finally signed the contract on our lowest price equipment policy. So if you or your members have been concerned that The lowest price they've been quoted by Hub so far is $500 for an annual premium for your equipment insurance. We do have something that checks in with a low end price of $250 for up to $35,000 worth of coverage, all risks. So again, Hub has both personal lines and commercial lines available. A lot of these things may be beneficial to musicians. A lot of our folks who don't have access to these products are looking for a way to get a discount. Also, something that we back and support. It's a good pathway here. We do have a direct person that we contact with. It's fairly easy to use, and we're proud of this relationship so far. I just recently got back from a Union Plus benefits conference. Union Plus mostly benefits our United States members with a whole suite of different things, some of which are a little more mundane, but some of which can actually be transformative. A lot of things, again, with help navigating the ACA marketplace. I personally save 15% a month on my AT&T. You know, it's not dollars, but I not a huge amount of dollars, but I still count mine. So a $200 phone bill defrayed by $30 or so is very helpful, right? So and then of course now I don't want to spend too much time on this. I know that I don't have a lot here listed for Canada, and I apologize for that. I did recently, Antoinette and I reached out to our representative liaison over at Union Plus, and we did find a list of their particular products that are discounts that are available to Canadian musicians. I think there's a different program there, and I'm going to take the mea culpa on me not fully fleshing out what similar benefits may be available to our Canadian musicians. That is something I want to rectify for this. And if you want to reach me after this and talk about where I'm deficient on that, how I can improve, I'm happy to hear that. Now let's talk about stuff specifically for you all as local officers. The biggest thing I want to talk about is freelance co-funding. That again is kind of the flagship program in my department because it puts cash in your pocket, right? This is actually the bylaw mandated thing that my department does as well. We allocate $100,000 annually from the general fund towards initiatives for our freelance musicians, independent musicians. But as you can read here in our purposes and goals, it's not just exclusively for our freelancers. Everyone can benefit from this, and everyone does. There have been some really great projects throughout the Federation over the time that I've been administering this. I think we've gotten our numbers out, but I'm going to be honest, we're still not using our full allotment. That money doesn't roll over. If I only use 60,000 one year, I don't get 40,000 extra to use the next year. And I've never hit 60,000 since I've been doing this in 21. They were averaging about 25 grand a year for the 10 years prior to that. I've hit 50,000 a couple of times, but I want to get that up. I think you all know about the basic structure here. It is co-funding. So you are expected to come up with some of that money yourself for whatever the initiative is that you proposed. And I know one of the big questions I always get is, can you provide some examples and that sort of thing? And that's why in some of these graphics, I've tried to show some things that folks have done in the past. And I'm certainly willing to have that conversation with you as well, but it almost needs to be kind of tailored to your musicians and your region and your community with what regard to what you do. But this just kind of talks about the requirements, what you need. Again, here's just some numbers. We're actually at almost 30,000 approved so far this year, which would put us on for a record year in my time that I've been doing this. So I'm kind of excited about that, but I want to go ahead and officially answer a request that I've had for many years, and that is there a form for the application? Because previously it's been just kind of writing a free-form essay about what it is you want to do and trying to make sure you've checked all the boxes. So I've created an online form. It is a lot of stuff to fill out, but there are quite a bit of things that have to be answered. The guidelines are very specific. So I'll mention this again, and I'll make sure this gets out to you on an email. But if you go to afmfreelance.org, that's letters AFM and the word freelance.org, you can link to our new freelance co-funding application. All of the requirements and everything are there. You can read all about that, and you need to before you actually start to attack it. And I know it's a pretty significant form to fill out. It's multiple pages, but hopefully this simplifies the process, keeps us from having to write novellas, which is not really in my wheelhouse either, quite frankly. And I hopefully this will at least dispel some of what may have been a hindrance to getting a request in. Again, our AFM Quartet program for locals, this is to me is the better use, along with supporting campaigns and things, of having that in-house hosting. I love serving members and giving them discounts and everything and helping support their individual endeavors, but helping you all, especially your small locals who are having trouble standing up your websites on your own, and then doing my best to help guide you, to learning this skill yourself. Because I've seen this happen in many locals. 30% of our locals don't have websites at all, and that needs to be corrected. You've got to have something out there, something official, where when someone makes a search, they at least recognize that you're a professional organization that's not just on the back splash page of afm.org. But two, it'd be nice, at least on some level, if your officers and folks who are administering your communications and your website have some cursory knowledge of how to make these edits. WordPress is very easy to use with our Quartet program. It's super low cost. It's $70 a year for registration and the hosting. You get a lot of help with that. You get a lot of assistance. We hop on a Zoom. We talk to you. We teach you how to do these things. Again, I love doing stuff for people, but I love teaching people even better. So if there's an opportunity for me to, kind of guide you through something and teach you how to do some of this stuff on your own, it really helps when there's officer turnover too. I'm sorry to say that so many times, we lose an officer for whatever reason, and the next administration comes in and doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to start, and that obviously hurts our membership as well. So I'd love to get folks started on this. If you're using one of these products, we're planning on some more improvements again, creating a new look. This needs to be modernized. And certainly I'm looking towards getting that listing and cataloging system in for our musicians to kind of make that referral system a module for the sites. For as far as Action Network goes, you've probably all seen a lot of literature about Action Network and what all we're doing with that. It's an excellent mass communication tool. Beyond just making sure that your newsletters and communications land in inboxes for your members, there's also a lot you can do with targeting specific folks and groups, as well as surveys that you can execute this way. It's not the most intuitive, but it's also the most free, because the Federation purchases a license. It doesn't cost you anything on the local level to use this. So if you've got experience already with one of these mass communication tools or any kind of CRM like MailChimp or Constant Contact or something like that, this is probably going to be a fairly easy transition for you. And if you're a little bit cash strapped in your local or just want to try something else, this could save you a lot of money. I know some folks are spending like $500 a year in their MailChimp. So if this is a help for you, we do offer trainings. We have adopted this again, Federation-wide. The next training for folks who kind of already have that experience, some experience in the constant contact and MailChimp space, on June 25th, we've got a training coming up. I think there's going to be a forthcoming announcement about that. Yeah, we're getting close to the end here, and I think I'm doing fairly well with my time. I want to talk about some new initiatives and some things that we're doing now. One thing that did happen in the year that I was away being the full-time director is that we really started moving into the space of working with our appearances in the public space, conferences, trade shows, different areas there. We put together a lot of great materials. Again, I can't thank Antoinette and Dave Shelton enough for helping to author this and design a lot of these things. Antoinette's really great with design and always willing to help you folks on your local level. But here's just a great shot of a booth we did in Atlanta for the Jazz Educators Network. We've appeared at some of these larger scale events like this, but we've also enabled locals to do this on your own. And that's really the goal, not to send the sheriff in from the Federation to come into your event and speak to the local folks there on your behalf, but to try to provide you some resources, tools, and the ability for you to do this on your own and have a professional, polished-looking booth that you can present to folks. And there's all kinds of opportunities for this, whether it's an educational conference, we do merchant trade shows, but also wedding shows and things like that. We want to be thought of as a great referral service and pipeline to fantastic musicians for folks who are looking to hire. So again, these resources are available. Right now, we're not offering those items free of charge, but that could be a freelance co-funding request or grant. If you are looking to have some of these resources in-house, and most of these things are already designed, it would be as simple as us plugging in the name of your local and everything like that. You've seen our new brochures. We're proud of these. Again, these were a recent author, especially the gold brochure is the one that has the more principled, focused messaging. That's always the one I'd like to give folks first, but we've always got to have those benefits and services backed up in our blue brochure. I think this group probably has a pretty great idea about MPTF. I just want to remind you folks that along with MPTF, I know there's a lot of ancillary costs and different things that arise that MPTF doesn't cover, and especially if you've already been struggling to find your co-sponsor and that sort of thing, if you're not doing one of our 100% funded events. So always consider freelance co-funding to help you support one of these events if you need to, whether you're doing venue rental, backline rental, need to do extra publicity. It's a great opportunity and a great way to get independent musicians an opportunity to play and see what it's like to work under a contract and get paid fairly and be treated fairly. Probably one of the last things I want to mention is that, again, I'm reaching out to all of you, and I hope that you'll do all this, reach out to your membership and communities as well. But this is not something we can do alone. I can't do all the freelance work alone in this department. You can't do all the community building and organizing work alone on your level. And again, there's a lot of folks who are very willing to help out and want to get involved and want to be a part of things. And also folks who need to be seen, need to be heard, and need to be represented. So I think fostering this idea of having subcommittees, groups, culturally inclusive groups, genre inclusive groups is really a great way to, one, get folks involved, but two, have them represented. I mean, I don't think I need to tell anyone here that we do have a little bit of an optics problem across the Federation, and that's fine. But as long as we're working to dispel that and show that we are the musical union for everyone doing this kind of work, for all instrumentalists all across the United States and Canada, doing all kinds of work in all kinds of music, that's the important thing. And I think we're really making some great strides there, but at the same time, we need to be very deliberate in our efforts as well. And so anything we can do to give folks a voice and get folks involved, let's do that. And lastly, just my contact information, always willing to talk about these things individually with you all any chance you need to. I'm fine on the phone. I don't mind doing that. Maybe I'm of the age that I'm cool with that, but I also accept text messages, emails, any other way you'd like to get, and I like Zoom calls too. And as far as this presentation here, all of this information you have access to. I think Dave sent it out, but it's also on the back end of afm.org. So that's the end of the deck, and I think we can transition over to the talkback.
Thank you, Wages. I know you were worried about getting all of that information into one session. Thank you for doing that. A lot of offerings out of the Freelance Services Department. While people are thinking of what questions they may have for you, I can tag a couple of things. Here are some web locations. This is all going to be on afm.org. Now, when I give you some of these places, you may say to yourself, that's not the location that Wages gave to me. He's provided you some shortcuts that are easier to remember. I'm going to give you their home locations. They both get you there. It's the same documents. You can find membership brochures and other recruitment materials in a folder called Press Kit. You'll find that down at the bottom of the Document Library tab. The slideshow that you just saw, you can download it, and Wages won't mind. You can screenshot each individual slide, however you want to manipulate it and use these materials in your newsletters. You can find a copy of this slideshow in the Education folder. It's titled something very similar to Freelance Department Services Overview. You'll know it when you see it. Description of and the requirements for the freelance co-funding program. Wages just spoke about that often, about all of these various ventures. The AFM has a pool of money set aside to help particularly smaller locals in being able to afford these services. You can find those documents in a folder titled Local Officers Confidential. Note that this is a folder confidential just to elected local officers. It includes forms and applications that we don't generally disperse to our rank and file. A second thing that I'd like to tag for you is that Wages talked a bit about live contracts and how we need to do a better job of educating our members on how to protect themselves with such. I'm very happy to announce that in cooperation with the AFM EPF, the pension fund for U.S. locals, that there's new guidance and, in fact, a new form. You're about to receive an information blitz on this. The LS1 form has been amended. It is now attached to a packet with full instructions. We believe that this will be a great tool for locals, but we want you to know to replace your existing LS1. That is not yet hosted. It was just approved 2 hours ago. But in a matter of days, if not hours, you will find in the education folder and in the live engagement contracts folder, it'll be in two places, a full packet about the LS1. Soon there will also be guidance coming for the simpler contracts, the contracts that don't require pension contributions, such as the L1, the L2, and the T2 in the United States. In October, Liana White, the executive director of the CFM, will be the presenter here for Officers Edge Live, and she will be discussing specifically the Canadian live engagement contracts. So we hope that all of our Canadian officers can join us then. I'm going to check the chat and see if we have questions there. I'm also going to change my view so that I can see any of you who may be raising your hands. Edmund is requesting a carrier pigeon. We do not currently have the funding for that, but I'm happy to bring that to committee and see what the powers that be think. I see Brother Nate Ondahl. He has his hand up. Nate, unmute yourself, and what do you have to add, my friend?
Thank you. I was just wondering, Wages and Dave, if you could give us some talking points, some starting places on the GoPro streaming. I personally get asked about that kind of thing, just along the relationship to, or the conversation next to like the Spotify issue that no one here needs to be told about. But is there just some interesting little talking points or ways, something that we can start with locally here to get people to kind of use that? And then I guess related to that, is there anything that would streamline it for you all? Because I'm going to guess that it probably doesn't have the same back-end support that something like Spotify does. So is there anything we can do here locally that can streamline that for you all?
Those are great questions, Nate. I'm going to let my friend Wages tackle those. He's the expert, of course, on this.
Well, the unfortunate thing is we don't stream. We only offer downloads. So
okay, well that's a piece there.
Yeah, and honestly, as a music consumer, I'm really grateful just to own my music, and I think still on kind of this like sort of homegrown level, this is probably how people still prefer to transact business. I mean, my vision for GoPro Tunes is, one that maybe you saw somebody out that you liked, on the local level, and then you Google them afterwards, and then their result comes up on GoPro Tunes, and you see, oh man, this is through the labor union, and this says that the artist gets all of the money that I'm paying for this, right? Like it says right there on the label that this is the way that the artist that I enjoy gets the most of my money that I'm trying to, and maybe they put a QR code, which is the link to their page on GoPro Tunes out on a table at the venue or whatever, or can flash it on their phone or something like that. So that's kind of I see how that works. Again, I don't think it's the most revolutionary product, because in the time it was created, it was probably more in line with like what iTunes was doing at the time, right? Which people were still buying whole albums and, downloading tracks and stuff like that. But, again, I think the thing here is more like spiritually what it means is, you're definitely giving your money directly to the artist via this transaction. We're just facilitating that transaction as opposed to being someone who needs to make money off of this, because we don't. We go in the red to offer this service for our folks. So, as far as getting that messaging out there, that's probably a good idea, because again, this is more of a concept rather than, something that would be competing with like a Spotify or.
Well, that would be probably pretty tough to do.
Yeah, if that makes sense. So yeah, why don't I get something like that together? Again, it's all going to be dictated by the interest that I get, and I'd love to just start getting an influx of some new albums out, and have some folks try to get their stuff on there. And now that that's so possible, see if that works and if folks have a good experience with it. I got to say of interest, and I hope you wouldn't mind me saying this, but our biggest seller is an organist in Arizona who sells a tuning CD, and it's just different pitches at different hertz, like 30 tracks, and people from all over the world buy that thing, and he gets the money. And it's an interesting idea. It's different, but it really worked for him. And again, it's broadened his marketplace, and it's fair.
That's interesting. Thanks.
Robert Frazier. Hello, Bob.
Hey, um, forgive me if this came up on the deck, but I had to step out of the room when you were talking about the co-funding program. So the question I have is, what do you think is, or what is the most common use of that money? And can you give a couple of examples of the most innovative uses of that money, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, innovative. I'll say this. I'll say that the initiatives I've seen be really successful and the ones that I felt really great about are the ones that fostered some kind of community building, right? So the freelance co-funding as a companion to a showcase of your musicians, again, whether it's MPTF or some other kind of thing, is always great because whether you're giving your member musicians an opportunity to perform, um, or giving someone from outside of your membership community an opportunity to see what it's like to do a union gig, that's great. I will say, and this is always a caveat, I didn't mention this, is that we don't pay musicians to perform music. So that's the one thing that the funds can't be used for. Um, Again, as a companion to MPTF, that's great. If you're getting the money from some other source, that's great. We can compensate folks for other kinds of work they're doing. If you've got folks who are acting in some other capacity as the support staff needed, certainly that can be considered part of it. And again, if you're super cash strapped, if folks want to work and have the monetary value of the work they've done be considered as part of your contribution, we do that too. I try to get as creative mathematically and ethically as I can with this to make sure money gets in your pocket. So that's really my goal there. But as far as innovation, that sort of thing, I've seen folks do a lot to make improvements to their facilities, to their space. I've seen a lot of which sounds mundane, but it's something that brings folks in. People hosting events, even if it's a social event, which may have been somewhat discouraged in the past, but that's one reason people join. They like the feeling of belonging to something. I mean, that's in the title, it's union, right? Not all of it is standing behind a podium, changing the world, passing legislation, getting more signatures on contracts. Sometimes we just want to get together and talk about this shared thing that we do, this shared struggle we have, celebrate what we're doing. So I feel like that's been a great use too, but also we have a lot of great ideas educationally. Folks have hosted seminars. When we were coming out of the pandemic, folks invested in streaming equipment. Folks invested in education to show folks how to stream themselves. That's not necessarily intuitive, and people don't know what equipment to buy. Sometimes it's nice for local to have that stuff that you can borrow out to your members, if they want to try and stream an event and do it the right way. So those are kind of some of the things that have done it. It's a pretty blank canvas, and I can't recall anything that I've ever blatantly said no to. I think the things that probably make my eyebrows raise the most are where it's really just a single good or item or something like that. But again, there's almost something transformative that can happen with everything. Even if you're just passing out some kind of merchandise, it's an opportunity for a one-on-one conversation. So beyond granting the co-funding, let's talk about some talking points. Let's develop a script so that when someone approaches you because you're wearing a local X86 sweatshirt, what does that conversation go like? How does that work? So there always needs to be some kind of organizing, community building slant to everything that we do. But as far as more specific ideas, that's something I want to build out. I really do want to build out kind of a knowledge base that has some very specific examples, which I'm not giving you right now. I think it's probably what you wanted, but again, I want people to shoot for the moon with this too. I'll listen to anything. So
I can give a few other examples. And like Wade just said, it was left vague on purpose. They wanted locals to be able to have room to be creative, to know the things that makes their local tick. Every local is different. Every constituency and field of work is different. And so even though it can be frustrating not to have more strict guidance, the intention is for you to be able to think freely and widely. That said, I understand that it's helpful to get your thinking started to hear of some other successful programs. Here are just a few more. Wages alluded to, I believe, Louisville, Kentucky. The office that they owned and had owned for a long time had a large basement which wasn't in use because of leaks. And they thought if we could just plug these leaks and then buy some equipment and transform this space into a practice hall slash recording studio. They have mics hung and a computer there running basic software where a kid without any resources could come in and do a demo. They had to come up with a lot of the money for this, of course, but they applied to freelance co-funding to help get them over the hump. This was a direct benefit to freelance musicians in their local. That's just one idea. We have many locals who have applied, particularly smaller locals who were trying to reach out to the local university and to get in and to message with those kids and hear from those kids before they and as they are just entering the workforce. And they helped fund food and non-alcoholic drinks. And I don't know if there was a rental fee required for the meeting space on campus, but multiple small locals have availed themselves of freelance co-funding to help stage listening sessions in the freelance musician category. On the far other end of it, an expensive venture, we have people who have, as Wages alluded to, have helped pay for support staff for a run of performances that was being funded. The actual performance was funded elsewhere, but the accoutrement surrounding that performance was funded by freelance co-funding. We have a local that sponsors a radio show. It's hard to measure the impact we're getting from that, but that local is excited about having a presence on that radio show and having their local mentioned several times an hour as a result of their cooperation. Bob, those are just a few ideas, and the people in this meeting are fully capable of coming up with even better ones, I know. Maybe that'll help get you started.
Thank you.
I have Hunter, and then Edmund, and then Lori, and Dan Stevenson. Hunter, what do you have, sir?
Yeah, thank you for all those examples. I was actually going to mention that one of the functions we've been pursuing here at Local 99 has been to host open jam sessions for the community, and we've been lacking funding for that for a while. I think we already have our freelancer co-funding application for myself as support staff in order to get that started, but I would hope that, if I'm not here in several years, that would be something that we could use those funds for, because that is proving to be a very helpful thing for freelancers, just to get people in the door, to see our rehearsal space, to potentially want to join just to use it, or to engage in further conversation about membership there. So doubling down on that specific point is something that's worth doing for every local hosting social events. But my question in specific for both of you was alluding to brochures. So I know that we have the 3 brochures that you all displayed. Is there a brochure that the Federation has put together that is specifically targeted to freelancers with that list of stuff that was on one of Wages' slides? If so, how can we get access to it? Is it possible to get it printed professionally with lower cost to the local specifically? Is there something like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So far,
ahead,
oh,
Wages.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say the blue brochure, the one that really does list the benefits and services, is probably closer to that idea. But I mean, maybe what you're saying is should be right there on the label, right on the front of the package. AFM for freelance, worded somehow so that person says, oh, right, this is me. And I'm not the CBA person. I'm not playing in theaters. I'm not on the symphony stage. Something that's very, very overt there on the front of the brochure. And then maybe the content isn't that different inside, but it's not something we've thought about, but it's probably a really great idea. I guess our thinking when we developed these was that, they probably stood on their own, and that's what we've been using, at our events and things to hand out. And they are available in multiple languages. If you're not aware, once again, we do have French and Spanish language for everyone. But that's a really good idea. And if we did develop something like that, and I think that there's probably enough interest from what I'm hearing in doing something like that, it would be available just as the others are. Maybe as a fourth companion piece. I don't know how much people are into paper and that sort of thing nowadays, but people do love to take stuff with them. And, even if they read it one more time, and then maybe go to the website later or whatever, that's really great. And I just getting the right optics and right messaging out there that we are there for independent musicians. We're there for freelancers. even if you're not or never going to work under a CBA, we're still the place, So if making a new brochure for that is something useful. And just since I was talking to Hunter, one thing I didn't mention, and I guess this is because my brain's been retrained because we've had the organizing staff here, but several of the co-funding requests we've granted have been to help locals hire either full-time or temporary staff organizers to either develop a short-term target in their community or to work year over year. So certainly that could work for organizing staff as well, and should, because that's where our mind should be most often. So thanks.
Thank you, Wages. I can tag that. There are actually two blue brochures, but the one that Wages is to which he's referring, the US version just simply says AFM musicians is the main heading, and the Canadian version says AFM and CFM musicians. It's a half-page, two-sided card. You can download digital versions, and yes, of course, we can supply printed materials at a great discount. We don't make money off of our locals. We do have to pass certain expenses on. The brochure that he's referring to is based on an existing memo, and it's also in the press kit folder, and it simply says freelance musician benefits. And so you've got some of the same information in two different formats. You can download, copy paste, screenshot, use these materials however best to reach out to musicians in your area. While you're in the press kit folder, you'll also find something I want to promote, a card called Anti-Musician Bingo that was developed by one of our staff organizers. We found, there you go, Wages. That's an interesting card. It'll make you giggle and also make you cry, but they are there, and some other materials in the press kit folder. We're going to go to Edmund, and then Lori, and then Dan. Edmund?
Yeah, just really quickly, I actually was going to mention the whole thing about the co-funding for organizers as well. So you kind of scooped me, but I did want to say that one of the things we are using funding for is that we right now are creating practice rooms in our hall on our bottom floor and moving our offices upstairs. So we did. I mean, we were able to get funding for just one of the acoustic doors, but each door is like $5,000, so it helps a lot. So it's any kind of project like that is definitely up for grabs. And I want to thank Wages for encouraging us to apply for that.
Thanks, Edmund. And we want to thank you and Tammy and all of your staff at Local 7 for participating in the NAMM show and for being such a great local ally as we try to staff these trade shows and conventions. You've been a big player in that from the start, and I want to thank you personally for that. Let's go over to Lori, who's been patient.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate all of the informational stuff. I have a psychological question that I think we're all not answering and we're not looking at. Or we are, thinking about is, how do we talk to our own members about reporting their gigs or, doing contracts when I've been able to get people to do it. I've probably, at one gig, I was not the leader, but I actually wrote out a card that we fill out here, and gave it to each person that was on the gig so that they could, a copy of the card so they could report their gigs. But how do you psychologically, how do we do this? How do we talk to people who are our members, who know all these things, but who either don't think it's important or who knows?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, Wages, if you don't mind me stepping in on this one, is that this problem is not unique to Local 325. I'm sure that you saw a lot of heads nodding while you were saying this. We are all painfully aware that this system needs perhaps a fresh look, that it isn't working the way it did in the past. I'm not going to give you a long, boring history session, but the way that we got to this point, and is that there's a philosophy that people who work the most should bear the greater burden of supporting a local, and that people who are proud to have a union card in their wallet, but they're not really active anymore and they're playing 2 gigs, that membership card probably shouldn't cost them as much as the biggest actor in town who's doing thousands of dollars of work. And so that's the principle behind paying work dues in addition to periodic dues, because if you collect work dues from the people who work the most, that allows the base rate, periodic dues, to be as low as possible. And that's why the system was constructed as such. And sometimes, particularly a new generation of musicians who weren't brought up in this system as well as their forebears, they think this way. They think, but I didn't get any help getting this gig. I got this gig. I did it all on my own. Why should I pay work dues to the union for something that no one helped me with? I think everyone in this room, I would be preaching to the choir to say that we recognize the fallacy of that thinking from the start. But that is what we're up against. I'll tell you a quick story, a very quick story. About 5 years ago, I was booking a rock band for a chain of restaurants in Lexington, Kentucky. Didn't need a piano player, so I wasn't playing, but I had the guys that they wanted for a power trio, and they were paying once a month, which was fine. I was fronting the band, and once a month the restaurant would catch up and I'd make my money back. That was a 3-month contract, and after the end of the 3rd month, when we were not booked to play anymore, the restaurant didn't pay. They stopped answering the phone. They ignored my letters. They felt like they had nothing to lose because they weren't going to book the band ever again. So screw me, right? The problem is for them is that that gig was filed on a union contract, and they weren't just messing with little old me. They were messing with every professional musician within 200 miles of Lexington. And that was a power that they could not ignore. The union paid for the attorney. The union took them to court. The union sent a letter that let them know that, there were 200 people that were going to march in front of that restaurant if they didn't do the right thing. And I got paid. That's just one example of why, even though it may seem old fashioned, putting gigs on the card and filing with the local is the best gig insurance you can have. And that's a power that we give to one another just by the collective power of us swearing an oath saying, I'll stand by you if you stand by me. Then that offers a layer of protection that we just don't have on our own. And that hopefully leads to a conversation about unionism in general. Am I being naive? Do I think that conversation will always work? No, I'm firmly grounded on terra firma. I know that it's a conversation that we're all working on trying to be better at. And there may be people in this meeting who have a much better answer than I, and Wages may, and I'll give him a chance to respond before we go on to Dan. But in the short version, that's the best answer I can give. Wages, did I miss anything?
No, and I appreciate the example, and it's not something I'm going to be able to answer quickly and succinctly in the time that we have remaining. But there's 2 things that I would look to do because I'm guilty of this too. Like sometimes I just want to be more concerned with playing the notes on the page than trying to fill out a PDF or whatever. Beyond the thoughts of having work dues taken out and whatever. I actually don't mind doing that. When the process gets simplified, I'm much more likely to engage in that behavior. So this maybe was the second thing I was going to mention was what can we do to really simplify that process? Printing out a piece of paper, writing things in by hand. Most people don't operate that way, at all. And I don't even own a printer at my home. So, as far as going that route, the fillable PDF, is there a way we can, we've talked a lot about apps and stuff, and I don't really want to go too far into the tech world of things, but, filling out a form and having something be, digitally created that can then be shared amongst a group of people is a much easier lift and much easier path. And the easier we make a task for someone, the better. But as far as why we're doing this and what's important about it, that's something we just need to keep repeating over and over again. That's why this education is so important. not only understand why it benefits you, but understand how your actions can negatively affect the other musicians that are in your community, and why you're not taking care of your work lowers the standards for everyone else and has the potential to hurt somebody else. And maybe that's not always on the front page of our website, and it's kind of a dark thing to lead with, but we probably do need to shuffle a few of those cards to the top of the deck and make sure that people are seeing that over and over again. We can't force anybody to do anything. We don't want to be police where we're making people do stuff. But at the same time, if we do the education the right way, or at least as taken as far as we can, at least that seed is planted. And then they're making a conscious decision. They're saying, you know what, my individual needs are greater than the needs of the community. It's a bummer, but I have a feeling that most of the folks that I work with and musicians that I talk to, even our younger people who are doing what they're doing, but which I guess I'm not one anymore if I'm saying sentences like that. But I think their brains and hearts are in the right place too. It just, it might be a slightly different pathway from there, but we'll continue to work towards getting that branding out there. We'll make words, we'll make pictures, we'll make social posts that help you get the word out there and help people understand what's going on. And then on the back end, when they decide, you know what, to hell with it, I'm gonna file a contract for this. We'll make that part as easy as possible so they can get it done so quickly and so simply. And there's no lift on their part whatsoever. It doesn't take any extra effort to do the right thing. So
I will add that our PDFs are electronically fillable. And if someone is good with their phone, they can do these things on the phone and ship it off to a printer. We on our end, we do have modern forms. I would also add that building a pension for a freelance musician should be front and center on the information we're giving them.
Most of the people that I have talked to are interested in that. One of the things that we actually got a phone call from someone who, through a different person. One of the things I talk about is I report my gigs so that I can talk about them. And Jim Davies got a phone call a while back from someone who did not hear this from me, but they heard it from somebody else who was reporting their gigs, that they wanted to report their gigs so they could talk about it. And he was floored that he actually, because I've talked about that a lot. So that is, that's one way. I know we have gotten more people, but it's just frustrating to hear people say, well, you didn't get me the gig, so why should I pay?
A lot of young musicians don't even know that they're supposed to be doing it. What we're experiencing in large part is a breakdown of information being handed down from generation to generation. Something happened, we don't have time to get into it, but something happened in our zeitgeist in the late 70s where we lost control of the clubs. And that began the decline in our freelance membership, but also the decline in the sharing of information to what now is my generation of musicians who are in their 50s. But yes, you're right. And again, the pension thing, if a 25-year-old gigging musician start putting in pension contributions and they know how to do it, and it isn't that hard, and it isn't that hard to get vested in our pension. If you're really out there working the clubs with any degree of rapidity, you're going to vest. And all of us understand that it's hard sometimes to talk to a 25-year-old and convince them that in 40 years, this is something that's going to be very important to them, because 40 years from now sounds like it's forever away to a 25-year-old. I know, because I was one. And now I'm in my 50s and I'm going, man, if I'd invested then, or if I'd done this then, right? So that's some wisdom that older people can give to younger people that could really change their lives in a few years. Dan Stevenson has been waiting very patiently. Dan, are you still with us?
I am. Thanks, Dave. Just a couple of questions, if I might. And maybe we can talk offline sometime, Wages, and I appreciate your accessibility. That's very good. But I'm still working on this co-funding thing. So for those of us who have small locals, who don't own any rehearsal space or office, and don't own any equipment at all, really, and work out of a home like I do, is this information we should be passing on to the members? Is this gigs that member could spot? It kind of looks a little bit like the MPTF, looking at some of those requirements. Could you help me figure out maybe how this would kind of scale to a small local and our members?
Yeah, and maybe that is probably an online conversation because it's going to be dependent on the kind of musician we're talking about and me getting to know more about where you are. And I mean, are you talking about an angle from, bringing new folks in, or maybe some brand satisfaction, which again, I have no issue with for your current members, or some combination of both? I mean, you know, finding a space is not a problem, even if you don't have a space, again, community building is really huge. Having a forum where you can bring people together and talk about this stuff and let people peer behind the curtain.
That's what so this isn't it for, that's what I'm struggling with. So this is not for individual gigs, like there's a match like the MPF. I don't quite understand that.
No, it's not necessarily for gigging or performance. It's for any kind of initiative or proposal you want to do.
But it could be for a gig.
Sorry?
But it could be for a gig.
It could be for a gig as long as the money's not going directly into a musician's pocket for playing their instrument. Yeah.
So it's not going directly into the pocket. I understand.
Just for the musical performance, correct. Yeah, that's the only expense that's off limits.
So it does not pay individual members for playing the gig then, but it could support the gig in other ways or some other type of.
Absolutely, yes.
I got it. Okay, that's good. Thank you. All right. That gets me maybe thinking a little on the right path. Regarding the GoPro hosting, so I'm a member. I'm paying GoDaddy to host my site. Could I transfer it to GoPro and still maintain it myself, and just have you host?
In most cases, depending on what the CMS is, content management system, if you're with GoDaddy, you would have approached it either one of two ways. You would have either built it yourself, maybe you coded it, maybe you used WordPress or something similar, or maybe you use GoDaddy's proprietary builder.
Right.
And that's where you run into problems because all of those folks, like Square and Wix and all of that, they use proprietary builders. So that site really is only editable in their space.
Okay.
We can pull down a version of that site and pull it over here, but any place you take it, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have to code to edit it at that point. So,
okay. All right. That's helpful. But you could host it though, right? And I could still edit it, say on Wix. Is that correct?
Incorrect. No. Yeah.
Incorrect.
Once you're away from Wix, they cut you off. You can no longer edit because that's all, via a browser in their space in their proprietary system. We could host the site, but unless you want to really get into the code of the page and make adjustments that way, it's going to be that version of the site for as long as it exists.
Oh, well, that's okay. But GoPro could host it cheaper than GoDaddy does, or maybe not.
It's definitely cheaper. Again, it's cheaper, but you would have to be satisfied with that version of your site probably indefinitely. What I would recommend, and again, what we try to do and make this more of an empowering and transformational tool as opposed to transactional, is take this as an opportunity to rebuild your site in a more universal, manageable way. Try it over here. And that's another thing I'll offer to anybody who's interested, whether it's you or your members or anyone. Try us out. It's so easy for me to set up an instance of, a WordPress install or a hosting instance that you can try for free to see if you like it. If it's something that works for you, come on over. If it's not, no big deal. This again is something that we hope will enhance a musician's, life and professional presentation. It's not a moneymaker.
So could we develop the site without actually having to code? Is there something? Because you can do that on Wix, right? We don't have to
absolutely, yes, absolutely. And we would recommend WordPress for that, which we can install an instance. Or for individual users, we have a multi-site WordPress install, which is basically one installation, one hosting instance installation of WordPress that has multiple sites in it. We set up a site for you that's already got some pages built. You populate it with your information. It's not quite as elegant and developed as the advanced site builders and everything with like a Wix or a GoDaddy, but it does get you in where you're just adding photos and text and that sort of thing. So and that's free with our hosting.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Dan. Great questions. As we wind down, I'm scanning through the texts. I see that our director of comms extraordinaire, Antoinette Follett, is with us. She's offered you a shortcut link to the brochures. And Antoinette, am I reading correctly that we will offer paper brochures at no cost?
Yes, those PDFs are not meant to be just downloaded and printed because we want to make sure that the printing looks good, that they're using a union printer and all. We do have inventory, and because we're able to purchase so many at one time, our cost for printing is much more effective than trying to print 200 at a time. So you can order right on the brochures page. There's a form, or you can email me, and then I'll send it to the New York office to mail those out. Canadian members should contact the Canadian office for their brochures, or again, if you send it to me, I'll contact the Canadian office.
Thanks, Antoinette. I learn something every time we're together. Very good. Warren offers an example. Local 553 has a contract guarantee fund to support filed contracts. Hunter is being a good ally and standing beside a member who's dealing with something. And Nate, thank you very much for the kind words. Yes, I have finished the LS1 document and am about to begin writing one about the other U.S. live engagement contracts, and I'm working with Liana to include the best Canadian information possible. And I want that document to be succinct, but I understand your request, and we'll give great thought to including some contextual information like you described. Thanks again for the nice words. Yes, we are running long. We're losing a few people. John LeBlanc asks, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace are, quote, software as a service, or SaaS builders, like a hostage situation, he says. WordPress, however, is very portable. So he's just backing up what Wages is saying, is that even though these services don't always speak to one another 100%, it is an easy transition, and you will find WordPress very easy to administer. I believe we have Edmund, and at one time we had Nate, but he may have typed his response instead. We'll give him a chance, and I'm not seeing any other hands. Edmund?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit what Lori said about talking to your freelance musicians. One of the things that is extremely important, and I know that everybody's trying to do this, is that we have an orientation, and where we really, really stress the importance that the individual musician is the union. All of us together, we are the union. It's when Dave was saying that the union will show up, he's talking about every single member of that union going there and showing up. And we also are a part of a bigger union. We're part of the AFL-CIO. And we have so many brothers and sisters and siblings throughout the country that can support. But one of the things that I'd like to say during the orientation is that, because filing contracts and paying dues, all that is really important. But just remember that the pension is really great as an incentive to file those contracts. But remember that paying dues is awesome. And the reason why it's awesome, I know everybody thinks that I'm crazy when I say that. The reason why it's awesome is because it's our money. It's not the government's money. It's not the boss's money. And we get to decide what to do with it. Our money is part of our power. And we have to grab that power in order to be able to change the way our business is run when people are dealing with us. So when you start talking in those terms, we're not a service organization. We are a transformative social movement. And we have to actually start thinking in those terms and make sure that our new members, no matter their age, because we have members that are joining up in their 60s and 70s as well, that they understand that we are part of a bigger movement, and we can only grab that power if we stick together.
Edmund is preaching the gospel. I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm a pastor's kid, and he just made me want to take an offering and fry some chicken for lunch. That was good. I can't beat that, Edmund. Our hearts and minds clear. If not, that may be our closing thought. All right. It's always a joy to hang out with you guys. Wages can't hear if you clap, but he can see you wave. I know that we all appreciate his work and his time. And he appreciates you all. I know that very much to be true. Next month, we'll have Debbie Newmark, who will discuss the integrated media agreement and symphonic media concerns. If you have a symphony that is under CBA or may soon be under a CBA, you won't want to miss that. She is the guru of such. In the meantime, if I can be of help, I'm available by phone and email. And if I don't know the answer, which is often the case, I will connect you with the person who does. Solidarity, everyone. Have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Nate. And thanks, Wages.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.